Browns fans, here's the deal. I mean, preseason has been fun, right? I mean, we've seen a lot of highlights from guys who won't make much contributions, of course, during the regular season. But next up on the plate is real football. And that's the truth, okay? So in the words of Greg Newsome, the Browns rookie, Arrowhead, here we come. How about you get ready for Arrowhead in week 1 as well against the Kansas City Chiefs, and subscribe right now to the Browns Report for the best Cleveland Browns news and rumors. Welcome into the Cleveland Browns Report. I'm Matthew Peterson. It's a sad day across the NFL. A lot of hopes and dreams for the time being going up in flames as the Cleveland Browns, amongst all the NFL clubs, have reduced their roster down to the mandated 53-man limit. So before we go through the entire depth chart here, let's talk about and let's sort through everyone who's been cut so far. And so rolling things out here, take a look at the names being cut here. Looking at this group of 5, the biggest surprise for me from this group of 5 is Porter Gustin. I thought he's played very well throughout training camp in the preseason. Probably will see him on the practice squad. That's just my prediction. But for now, he has been waived by the Browns. This one has a bigger name that's notably on here. It's KhaDarel Hodge, would have been his 3rd year on the Browns roster, but the wide receiver has his season cut short for at least the time being. Don't get too far ahead here. These guys are not done for the 2020 season, but Hodge is at least not on the initial 53-man roster. I'm predicting if he clears waivers, which he very well may not, another team that needs a wide receiver probably would look at Hodge as being towards the top of the list. But if he somehow clears waivers, I think he'll definitely be on the Browns practice squad. But don't be surprised if another team like, say, the Detroit Lions, who desperately need help at the wide receiver position, San Francisco 49ers, they're always injury-plagued. There's a couple teams out there that will definitely be looking at Hodge, who also put together a nice highlight reel in that final preseason game against the Falcons. Checking out some other names that were waived as well, looking at this list here, and Sheldrick Redwine had some regular season snaps for the Browns not too long ago. He finds himself on waivers. Again, I could definitely see a team that needs some help in their secondary picking up Redwine, who's got some experience from the regular season. Now it gets a little interesting here. We've got some other players getting cut as well. Johnny Stanton, he was in a fullback battle with Andy Janovich, and I mean, unless you're like, I don't know, the New York Giants who take 2 fullbacks in 2021, there was only room for 1. And some IR news, Alex Taylor, the tackle, he gets put on IR, basically with the Browns. They also do with the last one, I missed it there, Emmanuel. What the Browns are doing here, basically, is they are stashing these guys on their roster because they can't play for the Cleveland Browns this season if you're placed on IR before the roster cut comes out. So basically you hang out in the facility all year and hopefully you're good to go next year. Quickly though, before we move on, Marvin Wilson down at the bottom. He was probably like the creme de la creme of undrafted free agents this season, and he finds himself on the waiver wire after getting cut. Made it this far, good for him. Bit of a bust coming out of FSU, but Wilson, a bigger name that's cut as well. It also gets a little more complicated. It's not simple. It's not fantasy football. It's not just simply straight to the waiver wire. Browns terminated some contracts. What does this mean? These 4 guys do not sit on the waiver wire. They go straight to free agency, had their contracts terminated, which means anyone can sign them at this point. Sheldon Day is probably the biggest name of this group here, and I expect the Browns to probably bring him back sometime soon after Cleveland puts a couple guys on short-term IR, which they can't do until Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday. So once they do that, I would expect Sheldon Day to be a name floated around to bring him back, but other teams have a chance to nibble at him, so it's a gamble Cleveland plays here, but he is terminated, and, well, that was no pun intended, but his contract's terminated, so he may be coming back. Just keep your eye on that. Hop down to the comments. Let me know who you think the biggest roster cut surprise is so far. Everyone's going to be screaming at me saying, KhaDarel Hodge, KhaDarel Hodge. I don't think his time in Cleveland is done. I think he's done well enough to earn himself a spot in the practice squad, but hey, let me know what you think down in the comments. Cleveland Browns have released their official 53-man roster. At least it's the initial one. There's going to be a lot of changes, okay? Tons of transactions, bodies moving in and out of Cleveland. But let's check out the quarterback depth chart. Not much surprise here. Mayfield and Keenum. The Browns, like you saw earlier, they waived Kyle Lauletta. They also are rumored to be signing a quarterback in Nick Mullins, who was waived by the Eagles to their practice squad. So that's worth keeping an eye on. But the Browns, no surprise here. Mayfield, QB1. Let's go. All right, here we go. Running back room. This one was a little more contested, okay? Top two names were guarantees. Then it got a little up in the air. Johnson finds himself on the roster. I had him as a surprise cut. I didn't really think he would get cut because Cleveland, you don't want to get rid of a guy who you've got hope for, and you don't really want to get rid of a guy who the Ravens really need at a running back position with no more J.K. Dobbins. Demetric Felton, he's had a great preseason. He's also a flex guy, works in that running back and wide receiver position, and a 2021 draft pick. And finally, you see Janovich at the bottom. He's the fullback. We just kind of lumped him in here with the backs. But those are the 4 running backs and the 1 fullback the Browns take on their initial roster. Wide receiver room, not much surprise here. The biggest surprise for me, at least, is Cleveland runs with 5 wide receivers for the time being. Thought they might go with 6, but at the end of the day, this is a Browns offense that doesn't run out of many big wide receiver packages, so save that roster spot for another position. Tight end room, I expect a name to be added, okay? I just don't see Cleveland running with 3 tight ends this season. Steven Carlson went on IR with a preseason injury, and it looked like those 3 plus Carlson were going to make the roster. So I'm guessing Andrew Berry is actively looking at the waiver wire right now to see if there's a tight end who got cut by someone else who could find a home in Cleveland. So keep an eye on that. Next up, the Hogs up front. Offensive line, those are the 10 guys I predicted to make the roster, and all 10 have, at least for right now. Again, the Browns will be shuffling pieces around, but for the time being, nothing too surprising here. Forbes was placed on IR, so that's why he's not here right now. He's done for the season as long as he's a Cleveland Brown. So those are the 10 offensive linemen the Browns will roll with, and honestly, it's one of the best in the entire NFL. But looking over the offensive side of things, who do you think is the biggest roster snub so far? KhaDarel Hodge is definitely a big one in my opinion. Whatever you think it is, let me know down in the comments. Browns fans, we've got some awesome friends over at BetUS, and they've got a great deal for you. Okay, you've heard me talk about it before, or if you're a new-time watcher/listener, here's the dealio. Go to the link down below, chatsports.com/bet. Step 1, done. Then use the promo code Browns125. When you do that, they're going to give you a 125% deposit bonus. So you put 100 buckaroos in, you've got $225 to dump on the Browns money line week 1 against the Chiefs or whatever you're feeling. But you got to use those 2 steps. The promo code after you go to the link right down below. Next up is the defensive side, the defensive line depth chart here. Yeah, the notable name not included, Sheldon Day. Besides that, I thought Gustin would make it, honestly. But I guess what happened is you look behind Malik Jackson there, Togiai. He was one of their draft picks this season who just hasn't played that well. But they didn't want to expose him to the waiver wire cut list, so some other team may take him. So they're forced to put him on the roster. But he hasn't had a great preseason, but hey, he's still a rookie. So, hey, Malik McDowell, too. Quickly talk about him. That's a good story. That's a good turnaround story. A former second-round pick from the Seahawks has been excellent so far with the Browns, and he lands himself on the roster spot, along with Tack McKinley, who's been MIA for most of preseason and training camp. Hopefully he can get his engines up to speed for week 1 against the Chiefs. Linebacker depth chart here. I expect the Browns to probably look and see if there's any big names that were cut from this linebacker position across the NFL. One thing to note right there, Phillips at the bottom. I fully expect him to be put on short-term IR tomorrow as soon as the Browns can, which will open up a roster spot. So it's just moves like that to keep an eye on. This roster is far from set in stone. Now, how about the cornerbacks? love this room right here. Okay, you see Troy Hill, he'll pretty much mandate the slot position. Greg Newsome and Greedy Williams, they'll take on 2 and 3. And then A.J. Green and M.J. Stewart, they come on this roster. They're really here for solid depth, okay? Because you look at the first 2 names, Ward and Williams, injury concerns right there. So you need extra depth at that cornerback position. Finally, the safety depth chart here for the Browns. The guys at the back, Harrison, Johnson, and Delpit, the 3 top guys. It'll be curious. I'm curious to see what the Browns do with Delpit. Haven't gotten a big injury update from him lately. I pray he's not going on short-term IR and he's ready to go week 1 against the Chiefs, but that lingering hamstring is worth monitoring. And then the rookie, Richard LeCounte III, he was one of the best preseason stories, one of the probably defensive MVP candidates, couple interceptions, so good for him for earning a spot on this roster. Like the offense, now it's the defensive turn. Who do you think is the biggest roster snub on defense? Personally, probably thinking Sheldon Day. He was working with that first-team defensive line throughout training camp and preseason, but the veteran gets his contract terminated. I expect him, if he's available after all this, to come back to Cleveland. I'm sure the Browns would like to do that, but hey, what do you think? Let me know down in the comments. Finally, it's our special teams unit. The notable thing to talk about here is Chase McLaughlin. After Cody Parkey got put on IR and released from the Browns in a mutual buyout. So what do the Browns do with kicker? I fully expect them to keep this an active competition. I don't think they're content with just letting McLaughlin be Santa and take the reins and fly this sleigh to who knows where. He's been a journeyman so far. So McLaughlin, I bet he's in a kicking duel competition for the next couple weeks for sure. Browns fans, what do you think of this roster? Go over to the comments, grade it for me on a scale of 1 to 100. Personally, I'm thinking this is about a 89, okay? And the reason why I just hold it shy of 90, I'd like to see a little more improvement in that linebacker position. The depth is just not there. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, he's going to be the bright spot in my opinion. I bet he will take over a starting role at some point in the near future. But just tighten up that linebacker room, and that becomes a 90 for me.